Hey friends, welcome back. Today we're learning about what I would consider is Ford's most exciting car. Second, actually, most exciting car. The first most exciting car that Ford ever introduced that we will ever probably own is the Fiesta ST. But the second one has to go down as the Ford Focus ST. Not the RS. You and I are learning completely unnecessary information about this for the next 20 minutes. So grab your mac and cheese. It's gonna take you about the same amount of time, and let's get into this. Which, by the way, I'm Alex Martini. Welcome to Martini Works. If you guys are looking for car parts, or gals looking for car parts, you can mod your car over at martiniworks.com, and that's a really great place. I said mod your, like, if you're looking for car parts or gals, we don't, that's weird. We only offer car parts. With that being said, it's really important for us to talk about this. Why? Because there's not a whole lot of cars that don't take themselves too seriously anymore. When Ford introduced the Focus and the Fiesta here in the United States after the SVT from the previous generation, it seemed like we hit this perfect little threshold of hot hatch fun, okay? The ST it's like a perfect example of a car manufacturer that just got it right. So there's probably something in this video that you didn't know. So if you're on the fence about buying one, my recommendation is just to watch the whole thing with me. And if you knew everything from this video, you can let me know in the comments and I will eat one jalapeno. That will be the punishment. What's the story with the Focus ST? Where did it begin? It comes off the Ford Escort heritage, and particularly the RS2000, and the global success that the Focus had in the Ford lineup. As long as we continue to think that America, the whole world revolves around America, unfortunately it doesn't, and the Escort was an incredible success globally. The performance side of things, where it came from rally, these were all little things that definitely helped it, but Ford made the ST in Europe a bit before we got it here. It was called the ST170, at least the previous generation. We got the SVT. In the States, it was not as good. Really, the United States is never really getting quite as good of a performance car than if it's made specifically for like a European or Japanese market. So unfortunately, we lost that round, but we won because eventually after the 2.5-liter turbo from the second gen that was powered with a Volvo engine, once we got that out of the way, the US finally got the third gen. Because in 2013, Ford graced us with it. The Ford Focus ST came from us 2013 to 2018, had a 2-liter EcoBoost engine with 252 horsepower and 270 foot-pounds of torque. The best and biggest thing about this is that you also got a 6-speed manual transmission. Ditching the Volvo partnership, this was actually going to be Ford's first take of making the ST as a standalone model versus just a trim. And even though I say that they ditched Volvo, we all know Volvo is the best actual company in the whole wide world, even though they're not, but they just are. Ford says that they did their own thing here, but really that was a Mazda designed engine, which is why a lot of people, if you kind of jump into the depths of this partnership, you'll realize that a lot of what made the Ford Focus so much fun and so exciting is that there's a little bit of soul and heart from Mazda in this car, but we will get into that in a little bit. Now, we only got the car for 5 years, like I said, 2013 to 2018. Why did it get discontinued? Because Ford hates fun and sedans. No, Ford decided to get away from selling anything that wasn't an SUV or a Mustang, apparently, here in the United States. And what we're left with is F-150s, SUVs, and for 5 years we had the ST. The big thing I always ask myself, and I actually realized this a few years ago when I saw these cars get so popular here in Wisconsin, is why are people cultish around this car? There's a little bit of a cult. Like, you walk into a Ford Focus ST Facebook group and it just smells a little cultish, you know, just a smidge, just something where it's like every once in a while you see a comment and you're like, I don't know if I'd ever say that in public because that's weird. But there is something to be said about it because a front-wheel drive turbo 4-cylinder car is a blast. Like, you put those recipes together, is it the perfect combination? No. A front-wheel drive turbo 4 that's manual, that's got a ton of horsepower and 270 foot-pounds of torque, you're asking for the car to be driven like you just gave cocaine to a ladybug. But it is enjoyable in the sense that it is so sporadic. And the ST is a lot like that. To me, the car is no different from the cult members that own an EK Civic or a Mazda Miata, their 10th one. It's the same kind of just like pure love that they have towards this car. I truly believe that this is one of those things that I really wish the Ford brand continued to develop and nurture here in the United States, because I think it was one of the first true standalone times where Ford felt like they had made something fun for the younger generation that was a little bit non-traditional in the lineup of things that Ford had been making in the United States for idiots like us that like to modify our cars. But it went away. The RS is a very cool car, we'll get into that, but the ST is the car that's more obtainable and it's more realistic. It's only more serious than the Fiesta, and it's the younger brother, you know, in terms of power and shoulders, but these things are authentically fun. If you haven't bought one and you've thought about buying one, I think you'd be pretty silly to not buy one and have a good time. You can turn these things into anything. You can have fun with them as a show car, you can make them an autocross car, you can make them a daily as you go to college, and you can still put it on some nice wheels and tires and make it look good, you can make it sound good. These are pretty solid cars. There's just a few things that you really need to look out for. There's a few things. We are gonna talk about the sound symposers. All right, this is the thing that Ford and everybody else now does, where they pump the cabin filled with fake artificial sounds. Sorry, this is supposed to be very chill and relaxed. I just have an out for people who fake loud exhaust notes, okay? And the ST did that. They make it sound like you're going fast when you're not. Fun fact, Lotus was actually the first one to develop this, not for a Lotus, for a Bluebird, no less. This was back in 1992. There you go. Take that to your next campfire and smoke it, okay? What's the sauce that makes a car fun before we talk about what makes this car blow up? So there's a few things. Ford made this to be an affordable, fun hot hatch. There were corners that were cut to make the cost part of this thing really work out. One of the ways that they did this is by using something called a torque vectoring control. It's just Ford's cost-effective answer to not providing a car with a limited slip differential. Front-wheel drive needs an LSD to really have fun when you get into the corners of anything, because essentially what you're doing is you're pushing through a corner with front wheel drive, and if those two tires are going the same speed, a lot of times you're gonna have understeer happening on usually the inside tire as you're pushing out. Really long-winded way of saying car's good at going straight, kind of sucks going into turns. So Ford introduced this. It's like a limited slip differential, but it's not, because it uses the brakes to control the spin rate of a given wheel. So it feels like a limited slip differential as you're going through a corner, but it's just an independent brake. So as you're going through a corner, instead of an LSD essentially operating and turning one wheel slower than the other or moving one wheel faster than the other, this torque vectoring control is actually braking the inside tire to slow down so that the other wheel can catch up. Very weird, very interesting. This is cool and fun for carving canyons, but it's known to be a little bit of a disadvantageous thing if you actually plan on tracking this car, because anytime you're touching the brakes for not braking purposes, you're heating up your brake pads. And you guys and gals know, if you've been on a track before, especially a high-speed track, you can go through your brake pads really quick, and you don't really want to also be going through your brake pads to turn through a corner. As much as we wish, you know, an affordable hot hatch from 10 years ago, that's terrible to say out loud, is perfect, it is unfortunately not. Here are some things to keep in mind if you're looking to buy one. Number one, synchro gears in the trans, they can have issues. This is a known thing. It's a known thing because they put too much power into the car. Doesn't matter, still fun. The rear hatch bolts are apparently finger tight from factory. If they haven't been fixed yet, you bought a gem or you have a serious problem. Number three, the front grille occasionally likes to pop out. Now, whether that's because the little latchy bits are breaking on it or that was just something from factory, it's what a lot of people complained about on Reddit about 10 years ago. The stock bypass valve can fail. The control arm ball joints have a tendency to fail just due to the stress. That also includes the CV axle boot can tear, and they do have a tendency apparently to eat spark plugs a lot. I don't know if this has to do with it being a direct injection engine, but that's just something that I also found. Now, these things don't like to be gunned in 5th or 6th. This is the thing that I'm gonna be talking about in a little bit. So if you haven't bought one and you plan on buying one, you're gonna need to listen to this. But most of the things I just mentioned are typical front wheel drive hot hatch issues. Anything transmission, ball joints, or just like chassis related things that are making those wheels turn and go forward, They typically have a higher wear rate on high performance stuff because you're putting so much stress underneath it. There's nothing really separating it too much. Plus you have the whole front wheels turning at the same time, so it adds a whole nother element to it. It's why front wheel drive sports cars are kind of a tricky one to really nail down. Real drive sports cars are easy. Throw a big engine in the front, bring the power to the back, throw some thick ass tires on it, and you're good to go. Now, one thing I will say to keep in mind, if you're still on the borderline, you're saying, yo, I found a car, it looks good, I think it's gonna be simple and clean, and guess what? It's one color and it's owned by an old lady that doesn't know what she has. Great. What trim are you buying? Because the microtransactions that are the ST1, 2, and 3 trim have made this an incredible car for a lot of people to pick up, but it has also made it a really easy car to accidentally spend too much money on. The ST1 is the base model trim. The ST2 is kind of like that plus trim, and then the ST3 is what I would consider to be the highest, nicest trim. Your ST1, you're getting cloth seats, halogen headlights, some LED DRLs, you're getting your basic, sound system, and you get like a leather wrapped steering wheel on certain portions. It's a pretty basic, modest setup. If you're looking for a steal, you want to get something cheap, low miles, and you want to mod it, ST1 may not be that bad. Now in ST2, you're going to start to get like nicer things. You're going to get partial leather, you're going to get HIDs, you're going to get the Sync 3, you're going to get Sony speakers, you're going to get some leather throughout the car like I just said. And then the ST3 is the highest trim model. You're going to get full leather, you get fancy seats that are very, very dope. You also get HID headlights, navigation, you get 10 speakers from Sony, you get a nice little steering wheel, carbon fiber interior accents, you get some ambient lighting, a power sunroof. All of these things though are important for you to understand because if you're on the buying fence of an ST, a lot of times you're probably buying from an enthusiast already and they're gonna try and pressure you into buying theirs. The ST portions of this do make a big difference on the resale value. Don't spend ST3 prices on an ST1. Very simple way of saying that, and I know it sounds simple, but with how many STs are available on the market, it can be pretty easy for you to make a mistake. Now, with that said, it does suffer from something called LSPI. This is the big one for us. It's not a genital condition. I try to say that with a straight face. It is not a genital condition. It's a problem. LSPI is a low speed pre-ignition. That's what it means. And it's caused by droplets or particles that move across the combustion chamber and ignite prior to spark ignition. What this does is it causes engine knock, and that's not the best. So avoid it. You have to do a whole bunch of things. This is like, it seems like no matter what, anytime we try to find an affordable, fun, hot hatch, sedan, coupe, rear wheel drive, front wheel drive, all wheel drive, if it checks all the boxes and it's cheap, there's always like this one small Achilles heel thing. Now this can be handled and it's not a terrible thing. You just got to keep it in mind. Why am I telling you this? You may not even want an ST, but now you know, okay? Because there might be a day. We don't know. You don't know. I don't know. If you want to avoid LSPI, you need to talk to your doctor. You also need to refrain from using cheap gas. Ford wasn't really as careful with the cruise control on this as well, and anything with low RPMs. So typically people will say, if you're going up and down hills, don't use cruise control and do not keep it in a gear where the RPMs are low. A lot of times people will say if it's below 3, you want to get out of that if you're going up and down hills. Now, they also say that you need to get your valves cleaned, which will help, but there are other ways that you can avoid this. You can warm up the car. Apparently, actually upgrading the turbo to get something slightly bigger will actually help as well. And don't gun it at low RPMs. Now, the don't gun it at low RPMs is going to be your difficult battle. That is going to be your burden to bear, okay? And nobody else is going to know that this is going on except for you, but you have to carry that weight knowing that your inner 15-year-old self can't gun it just because you're on the highway in 5th gear and somebody revved their truck at you. So keep that in mind and you should be just fine. The question I always get all the time, because we get asked quite a bit, before people buy all the car parts, they ask what car they should buy. The ST is probably the closest competition to the Volkswagen GTI. The GTI of this era, the 7th gen, it was pretty perfect. Like almost undoubtedly the best generation Volkswagen GTI ever made. They made it a little bit better in certain ways in the future, and they also made it in worse ways in the future, which is why I think a lot of people truly, truly love this generation. Damn near perfect. It had a 2-liter EA 888 engine. It had 210 horsepower, 258 foot-pounds of torque. It had a variable lift on the exhaust valves. It had an optional performance package. It had all the bells and whistles. It was fun. It was front-wheel drive. It was quirky, but it never, ever, ever missed an opportunity to deliver. What's the difference between a GTI and a Ford Focus ST? The Focus ST for me is like a line of powder at a college party, and the Mark 7 is being the disappointed ex-future wife. If you're really gonna put these two in a fight together, one is fun and the other is the one that you really should kind of grow up to like. It is objectively better. It is objectively more responsible. It's probably a little better looking. It just does it all better. It's something that you kind of feel like you don't really deserve. The Focus ST just wants to party with you all the time, no matter where you are and what you're doing. It is the one person you probably wouldn't want to bring home to dinner because they'll wear or say something irresponsible. They're the ones that will occasionally make a slightly racist remark at a Texas Roadhouse that makes you chuckle uncomfortably. This is the Ford Focus ST, and it is a terrific car, but it is jittery. It is noisy. It is sensitive. It's twitchy. It's fun. And if you don't like that, you're probably not gonna like a Ford Focus ST. It's got torque steer for funsies, for Christ's sake. They could have fixed it. They didn't need to have it. They left it in there because it's fun. Now, the GTI I always consider is like, it's the finish line. It's the goal. I kind of already made 20 analogies about it, but it is one of those things. It's what the segment should be. And so if you're kind of trying to compare the two, it's tough. Because you're buying the ST for the emotion and the driving experience. You're buying the GTI because you want a meal from your mother. So with that said, some useless facts about the car continue to surprise me and hopefully surprise you, which by the way, your mac and cheese should be healthily done by this point. And in this case, you're gonna wanna throw a little bit of Tapatio in it and you are going to thank me later. And salt. The backseat cushions fold forward like a 3rd gen 4Runner. That was kind of neat. You can actually get into a test menu if you want to. What you do is you press the start button without the brake to get it into the auxiliary mode, and then you hold the OK button, and then you start the car while holding it, and then from there, you have to hold it for like 5 or 7 seconds. It'll actually get you to adjust different screens. You can see different things, and it's all sorts of fun. It's like a little Halo 2 Easter egg. Why was the Focus ST discontinued? We talked about it. Ford hates fun. It didn't really line up with the whole thing that Ford was kind of gunning towards, and to be quite honest, small compact hatches just aren't the move right now. There's not many people out there that are buying these kind of cars. Even non-enthusiasts aren't buying these cars. And even enthusiasts aren't buying these cars. Unfortunately, when you start looking around and thinking about what people are buying instead, performance SUVs, old 4Runners, Tacomas, things like that, that's really what dumb idiots like us are buying, because the hot hatch community is good, but it's just not quite functional. Now, is it worth it to save money for the RS or the ST? I don't know how many times I've seen this argument on the internet. I don't know how many times I've seen this argument on TikTok by people that don't know what the they're talking about, but you can get an ST for like $12,000 to $15,000. It's affordable, it's easy, it's accessible. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. I type in Focus ST on the internet. There's 10 that show up, 12 if I go 10 minutes south. It's a good car, it's an easy car to get. That's nice, which means everything that comes along with the car is going to be easy. An RS, on the other hand, there is 2 in 250 miles, and both of them are $28,000 here in Wisconsin. You're paying twice the price for a different car. I don't know if they can really be compared. The power in the RS is insane. The all-wheel drive system is wild. You have drift mode. You have an entirely different car with a ton more power. I don't think they're the same car. I don't think they can be compared. If you're comparing an ST to an RS, I don't think you're buying an RS. I think you're trying to figure out if you can justify buying an ST and telling your friends that it's not an RS, which you will get a lot. You're gonna get a lot of people to tell you, oh, you got an RS, and you have to tell them, no, it's an ST. But an ST is fun in its own right. Don't feel bad about it. What mod should you do? Oddly enough, hood struts, apparently. That's a thing. A lot of people upgrade to an LSD. It's pretty common. M Factory, I think, seems to be a very popular one out there. It's a good way to get in there. Next, BC Racing BR coilovers, $1,200. NVIDIA Q300 oval catback, about $1,000. EBC Blue Stuff pads and slotted rotors are about $440 together. An InGen Ram air intake is gonna be about $400 with a heat shield. Short shifter is huge. JBR is a super common brand out there. It's about $140. White line sway bars are huge, especially for that body roll, $380. Front mount intercooler is something a lot of people do right away. Cool the engine down, make some nice fun noises. Something like that's gonna cost you right around $1,200. And then Cobb access port or similar, $900. If you try to start going into some of this other stuff, charge pipe, blow-off valve, $230. Rear engine mounts is really common. What happens is you get this bucking that kind of happens on acceleration with these cars, and that's because those rear engine mounts are so sloppy. This tightens it up, makes the whole car feel a lot better. That's gonna cost you about $200. If you wanna murder that dumb, silly music Simposer thing, that's free. You just have to find it online. And then of course for wheels and tires, 18 by 8.5 plus 40 with 245/45 look perfect. 1552 Tarmacs are some of my favorite on this platform. Also the 18 8.5 42 stage Knights in white look insanely good. I love the way that they look. And then 18 by 8.5 plus 38 gram lights with 245/40 tires also look pretty smashing. When would you buy a Ford Focus ST? I would buy a Ford Focus ST and I would own one. If I was like going into college and I lived somewhere where the population made me complain about the traffic and I still wanted to have fun and I didn't take myself too seriously and I smiled and I joked a lot and I had a couple of good friends and I enjoyed going out on Fridays but not till 2 a.m. That's when I would buy a Ford Focus ST. I wouldn't buy a Ford Focus ST if I had 4 kids and needed to be a responsible adult, because this car is anything but that. This car brings you back to being 19, even if you're 40. And it's important for you to remember that, because, you know, we can all have fun with it. But the good thing to remember throughout all of this, as you're munching on your mac and cheese, is that none of this information is important or really useful. So I hope you enjoyed nothing. If you guys have any questions on another car you think we should talk about, and if you learned something from this, let me know below. And if you didn't and you knew everything, tell me, and I'll start lining up the jalapenos. I'm Alex Martini. I hope you enjoyed this video. Go mod your car at martiniworks.com, or I'm calling your mother. And of course, thank you so much for watching this video. We'll see you later.